Welcome back to another update on the Ukraine cinematic universe. We have a lot of stuff to cover today, but before we do, I thought it might be appropriate to take a look back on a statement made by Joint Chief of Staff Head General Mark Milley, one of the executive producers of the Ukraine cinematic universe. And this is a statement he made back in February, and I think, as we could all agree, this has aged very well.
Russia has lost. They've lost strategically, operationally, and tactically, and they are paying an enormous price on the battlefield. But until Putin...
So I think that's exactly what we're seeing now. The war ended sometime in March. That the counteroffensive wasn't even necessary. Everybody just went home. So that being said, how is the counteroffensive going? Let's take a look. Zelensky admits counteroffensive is disappointing people. This is obviously a propaganda outlet. Newsweek, as we know, is a voice piece for the Kremlin. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky has admitted that his military has progressed slower than desired in its counteroffensive against Russia. I don't really know how it's a counteroffensive per se, because it's not like the line was stable and then they attacked. So it's not really a counteroffensive, but whatever. Some people believe this is a Hollywood movie and expect results now. It's not. Zelensky said in an interview with the BBC on Wednesday. We'll come back to it, but it's very interesting that now they're saying there is no Ukrainian cinematic universe. He's denying it. Dude, you're the director, actor, producer of so many of the Ukrainian cinematic universe movies. And now you're denying it. You're denying the investors, the executive producers, the NATO production company that's funded this. It's very ungrateful. It's moving for the counteroffensive is moving slower than expected. Is that Russian forces have placed a large number of landmines throughout the country. They didn't know this. There was no way to know this beforehand when they made all the promises that they were going to take Crimea in like a couple days. It's this. Whatever some might want, including attempts to pressure us, with all due respect, we will advance on the battlefield the way we deem best. The Ukrainian leaders also said that while victories on the battlefield are necessary, the war would not be over no matter how successful the counteroffensive might be, as long as Russian troops remain in his country's territory. Elsewhere in the interview, Zelensky once again spoke about his country's need for American-made F-16 fighter jets. I don't think those have even been sent yet. I think they're saying next year for them. Discuss the topic of NATO membership, which we'll get to in a minute. He was talking about nuclear weapons, so that's definitely it. Early stages of Ukraine counteroffensive not meeting expectations, Western officials. Who could have seen this coming? Millie, what was it that you said about this, the counteroffensive?
Russia has lost. They've lost strategically, operationally, and tactically, and they are paying an enormous price on...
Millie's telling us that everything's going good, and he's the head of the U.S. military. Or whatever. So we have early stages Ukrainian counteroffensive not meeting expectations. The counteroffensive is not meeting expectations on any front. What is it with expectations? It's like people can think it's flippant that I'm calling this a cinematic universe, but how else are you supposed to take lines like this? It's disappointing. It's like the revenue's disappointing. Like the new Marvel movie didn't do very well. I mean, I don't know. Let's see here. Ukraine's offensive is having less success, and Russian forces are showing more competence than Western assessments expected. Well, I mean, the expectations, if we go back, was that Russian army, honestly, if you go back and read the articles, the assumption that this offensive was based on was that the Russian army, despite having fortified positions, more firepower, and larger numbers, was literally just going to run away. The front was going to collapse. They were going to reach Crimea. Putin was going to be overthrown in a coup, and Russia was going to be broken up. If you go and read foreign policy, that's what they were stating. So The fact that the Russian soldiers even like fired back and didn't immediately run away was kind of part of this. And it's not as if nobody predicted this. Like I said, nobody could have predicted this. It's not like the New York Times back in December said Russia is building a vast network of trenches, traps, and obstacles to slow Ukrainian momentum. And they had there were at least 5 defensive lines, vehicle obstacles, dragon seed trenches. It's not as if anybody knew that there would be competence in the Russian defense. That's completely insane. No one expected that to happen. Ukrainian forces are proving vulnerable to minefields. Like, who isn't vulnerable to minefields? It's minefield. Okay. U.S. and its allies remain optimistic. Ukrainian forces will be able to make territorial gains over time. That is gigacope. That is like a galaxy tier cope. That's like Disney saying The Little Mermaid, well, will eventually make money on its streaming services. I mean, I don't know. It's a tough cry for both sides are incurring heavy losses. That's a bad. The weather, they're making steady progress. This is a very difficult fight. It's a very violent fight, and it will likely take a considerable amount of time and at a high cost, Mark Milley said. But, like, you said that Russia lost. Like, he said that, right? There's not going to be any accountability for that. He's not going to go down in history as an embarrassment. So, yeah, this, no one could have seen it coming, even though the New York Times reported it back in the day. Ukraine fears its long-awaited counteroffensive will not live up to the hype and will put pressure on them to negotiate with Putin. I mean, who could have seen this coming? After a failed Russian winter, there was no Russian winter offensive. What the fuck are they talking about? All eyes, okay. The Ukraine's defense minister had warned that raising expectations could lead to emotional disappointment. The expectations for a counteroffensive campaign is overestimated in the world. Most people are waiting for something huge. Pentagon leaks revealed U.S. planners doubt Ukraine's ability to muster an attack. Some fear a marginal victory could weaken the West case for sending vital munitions to Ukraine, pushing the country to negotiate surrender terms with Putin. It's rough. It's rough. I mean, here he's admitting to the existence of the Ukraine cinematic universe. The more victories we have on the battlefield, frankly, the more people will believe in us, which means we will get more help. So it's like not a movie, but it is a movie. So yeah. Okay, so that stuff is happening. Okay, Ukraine was gonna. We inspired everywhere because the perception was that we will fall in 72 hours. Okay, so that stuff is all happening. All right, so no one was playing. Who was playing this up? Who said that this counteroffensive was going to succeed? Who said it was going to? Like Zelensky's saying here, it's not a movie. It's not a Hollywood movie. It's not as if Ukraine released a trailer hyping this up as a oh wait, they did. Ukraine vows to destroy Russian rapists and murderers and latest action movie style trailer. So we could talk about Zelensky saying, "Oh, it's not a Hollywood movie, guys," but his government literally put out a trailer. Like, let's just watch this cringe. Let's just watch.
Україна, рідна земля мати. Господь.
They even have like the 2001: A Space Odyssey music. We got dudes driving around in shins. We got the music.
Я йду знищувати!
This doesn't look like a movie trailer at all, guys.
Хай рука моя буде твердою!
Doesn't look like a movie trailer at all. There's no Ukraine cinematic universe, guys. There's
Нехай
not.
зброя моя буде справна!
Okay, let's see here. Ukraine Ministry of Defense has released a video, a dramatic new trailer vowing to destroy Russian rapists and murderers. The slick film, shot like an action movie, shows Ukrainian soldiers stalking through woodlands, driving tanks and firing missiles as they chant a prayer of revenge against the enemies of their homeland. I am going to destroy those who have murdered my brothers and those who have raped my sisters, they say in the chant. So that is that kind of looks bad. I don't know if you can really walk back the whole it's not an action movie when you release a trailer billing it as an action movie. So the offensive, it's not going great, but we still got support from the U.S. Or do we? We have this statement from Joe Biden. Now, if we all recall, for like the last year, people have been saying Russia's running out of ammunition. Russia's out of ammunition. Ukraine has all the ammunition it needs. We're going to build it. We're going to make it. And then Biden says, "Yeah, we're out of ammunition." Like Biden is a well-known pro-Russia shill. So we're just going to listen to this pro-Russia shill Biden statement.
They're running out of that ammunition, and we're low on it. And so what I finally did, took the recommendation of the Defense Department to not permanently, but to allow for in this transition period where we get more 155 weapons, these shells for the Ukrainians, to provide them with something that has a very low dud rate. And it's not used in civilian areas. They're trying to get through those trenches and then stop those tanks from rolling. And so, but it was not an easy decision.
So but no, like Russia's out of ammunition. It's just, we have another pro-Russia shill though. This is Zaluzhny, the Supreme Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Ukraine, and he says in an interview he gave that his troops should be firing at least as many shells as the enemy, but they are currently, let's see, where is it? They have been outshot tenfold at times because of limited resources. I've seen him say 3 to 5 times in the past, so roughly he's saying Russia is firing about 5 to 10 times as many shells a day. But don't worry, guys, Russia's out of ammunition. The U.S. is going to keep supporting them. Biden here is not admitting to anything.
Mr. President, any update on the cocaine? Mr. President, I cluster munitions. Why now?
We're running out of ammunition.
That's rough, dude. So they ran out of ammunition, so they're going to this is a retired lieutenant colonel said that it's going to take 10 to 15 years to recover from all the ammunition that we've sent to Ukraine. We can't do it. We can't rebuild it. So we're going to send cluster shells, cluster weapons. Now, I don't know how effective cluster munitions actually are. I've heard a lot of people say that they're not particularly effective against trenches and heavy armor. What a cluster shell is it's a hollow shell that explodes and scatters a whole bunch of smaller bombs across an area. Now, my understanding is its primary purpose is to be used against infantry and lightly armored vehicles. I'd imagine it's also probably good in places like forests, as it has a very wide area of effect. I don't know if it really is ineffective against heavy armor. I could see it blowing the treads off the tanks, or disabling them. Also, I don't really know why it would not work against fortifications. I guess because it's not very high yield. But because they're just going to be sending them cluster munitions, who knows how many cluster munitions America has. I'd be surprised if they had as many as they had 155 shells. And I mean, if this is like... yeah, that's right. The U.S. said it was a war crime a year ago if Russia was to use cluster bombs. The problem with cluster bombs is because there's so many mass-produced smaller bombs. If even like 1 to 10% of them are duds, they will remain there for years afterwards, and a lot of them look kind of like toys. So kids will pick them up and they'll explode, and they're just very difficult to remove. But I don't know. It's once again, it's don't Ukraine's not running out of ammunition, guys. Russia's running out of ammunition. Zelensky's lying. Biden's lying. The New York Times is lying. All these people are pro-Russia shills. Don't listen to them. I'm, I guess, a pro-Russia shill by like reading an interview by the commander-in-chief of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. So that was kind of embarrassing. That was pretty rough. Running out of weapons for Ukraine. But once again, Zelensky does not bow to public pressure. This isn't a movie, guys, even though we released a trailer that made it a movie. He's saying we need to show results. Said Friday that the Ukraine army has to show results on the battlefield before the summit of Kiev's NATO allies in July. The president told Spanish media that the counteroffensive is advancing slower than expected due to weather conditions. Yeah, that's definitely the case. He also urged Western countries to speed up the delivery of military aid because that'll deal with the weather somehow. Before the summit, we must show results, but every kilometer costs lives. So we got the rain. Ukrainian officials said he will not attend it. So yeah, like I said, it's guys, it's not about the PR. It's about the journey. So this was something that was said at the summit by Czech President Peter Pavel, who said that Ukrainian NATO backers have until the end of 2023 to liberate as much territory as possible before they're going to have to come to some sort of agreement. The West is saying that you guys, like, we've given you all this money and stuff, you're going to have to deal with that. And this brings us to the big Vilnius summit. So, understandably, we've had a series of failures. Wagner, Civil War, The March for Justice was a disaster. They re-released a new cut of the Nord Stream movie. The Turk Stream movie got aborted. The Spring Offensive film is going nowhere, and they're releasing it as like a multi-part TV show. And with flop after flop after flop, and the only success being Prigozhin and Lukashenko's bizarre adventure, they're meeting and they're like, are we going to keep funding this? I mean, this is kind of like with what Disney's facing, where they've lost a lot of money. Their films, they've been putting down turd after turd after turd after turd, and nobody wants to like see any of them. So maybe we're going to have to meet. So you had the executive council of NATO, the production company behind the Ukraine Cinematic Universe, meet in Vilnius. And we're just going to take a look at some of the optics of this. Because there was some rough optics that literal rough optics that Zelensky had to deal with. Once again, not a movie. So this was a picture from the summit. To me, this is like the literal definition of bad optics. You have all the other delegates who are not paying attention to him. He's getting mocked by his wife. He's standing there in his military camo, just looking depressed. People are just no one gives a shit about him. He's just sitting out there in the cold. We have another bad optics picture, literal bad optics. Let me find it. Where is it? Bad optics picture. It's over. It's over. Look at that. Oh. He's even significantly shorter than the president of the prime minister of Japan. It's over, man. It's over. That is also, just look at it. Like, you have all the people who are dressed up, and he's just wearing his fucking t-shirt in military fatigue. It's over, dude. It's over. So the meeting didn't go exactly how it was expected to go. What Zelensky wanted from NATO and what he got. At last year's NATO summit in Madrid, the alliance formally invited Sweden and Finland to join its ranks. At this year's summit in Vilnius, Ukraine President Zelensky was hoping the alliance would extend his country the same favor. NATO claimed that Ukraine's future is in NATO, but did not say when that future could start. Now, I'm going to actually express some sympathy for Zelensky here. I bet you any amount of money that Boris Johnson and Biden and Blinken and Schultz and all these other F-slurs told him, you're going to get into NATO, Zelensky. You just got to keep going. You just have to hold out. We're going to build you up. It's going to be the Ukraine Cinematic Universe. It's going to make a ton of money. And we're going to be able to convince our investors, the American, British, and various other European peoples, to invest in this. We're going to go full in. Ukraine's going to join NATO as a full partner. It's not going to be a subsidiary anymore of the main production studio. You're going to get an equal share of the movie proceeds. And I think that's almost certainly what happened. I bet you any amount of money that Biden told him he was going to join NATO. Or he did it in like his sleazy, whatever, Uncle Joe way. I don't think they ever got the F-16 fighter jets. Yeah, so they did screw him. I also think that Biden and, I mean, this isn't even really a conspiracy theory. Throughout this, Biden and Schultz and Johnson and whatever his name is, the current Prime Minister of Britain, have been saying, you have a blank check, Zelensky, we're going to give you everything that you want. And it turns out that they didn't have shit to give him. Like, once again, this is what Biden literally said.
Is also run. Take a listen.
That ammunition, and we're low on it. And so what I finally did, took the recommendation.
We're low on the ammunition. So, yeah, like Zelensky, we said we were going to get you all the ammo you needed. That's not going to happen. We're going to give you some shit that you don't need and don't want. But it's going to happen. Only launched a bid for fast track membership in September. Any European country is free to apply, which is why its numbers have swelled to 31 today, soon to be 32 by Sweden's ascension. Now, I got to give Erdogan some credit because he pulled off your typical Erdogan play. He switched sides at the last minute, and he's like, okay, I'm going to back Sweden joining NATO. He got a whole bunch of stuff. The U.S. said that they were going to deliver the F-16s that they had previously promised to deliver. Funny how that keeps happening with the F-16s. They were going to get a bunch of investment money from the EU, and Turkey was going to be allowed to begin negotiations to join the EU. Now, does Turkey actually want to join the EU? I think there's a very low chance of that, but he got a whole bunch of shit out of this. So I think he won. Let's see here. The prospects were more chilling. Let's be clear about what NATO membership means. Article 5 of the treaty enshrines the principle of collective defense, meaning that attack on one member is an attack on all. Article 5 has only been invoked once in NATO's history after the 9/11 attacks on the US. If Ukraine were to join today with Russia's invasion raging on, the article would be invoked immediately, effectively dragging 31 countries into war with Russia. Joe Biden made it clear before the summit that full membership was not yet realistic. There's not unanimity in NATO about whether or not to bring Ukraine into the NATO family now at the moment in the middle of a war. We're determined to commit every inch of territory that is NATO territory. We've determined to commit every inch of territory that is NATO territory. You mean commit to defend or to maintain? It's a commitment that we've made no matter what. If the war is going on, then we're all in war. We're at war with Russia if that were the case. Wow, that fucking English is terrible. We can't have a new member in the middle of a conflict. That would just import war into the alliance. Look, whenever this conflict finishes, we should be prepared as quickly as possible to bring Ukraine into NATO. So, and people have pointed this out, why would Russia not completely dismember Ukraine? So what they're saying is, Putin, when you come to an agreement, whatever's left of Ukraine will join NATO. We will invoke Article 5, and we will rearm it as much as we can, and you'll have a hostile country on your border again. So isn't this incentivizing Putin to just completely dismember Ukraine? A clear path into the alliance without obstacles, once a clear timeline. Let's see here. In Russia, this means motivation to continue its terror. But NATO's... when will Ukraine has made it clear the former cannot happen before the later. So he just yelled about it. Biden said they were working to agree on the language. Ukraine's future is in NATO. We will be in a position to extend an invitation to NATO to join the alliance when allies agree and conditions are met. Was there any conditions presented? Nope, there's no timeline. We agreed to remove the requirement for a membership action plan. This will change Ukraine's membership path from a two-step process to a one-step process. That's great. That's definitely going to work. So that happened, and we did get some security guarantees for the Ukraine. We got some stuff. We got some security guarantees. So let's go through this. Okay, so there's actually before that we have some interesting statements here. Let's see, where is it? Okay, so Zelensky threw a fit, and he's like, "Look, guys, you're not giving me enough weapons. You're not letting me into NATO." And so we have is this Blinken Sullivan saying the United States has stepped up to provide an enormous amount of capacity to help ensure that Ukraine's brave soldiers have the ammunition, air defense, the infantry fighting vehicles, and mine clearing equipment, and so much else to be able to effectively defend against Russia's onslaught and to take territory back as well. I mean, Biden admitted that they don't because they're out of the weapons to give them. A thinly veiled swipe, charges leveled against the U.S. not giving him enough money were entirely unfounded and unjustified. The U.S. has so far given about $46 billion. I'm sure it's way more than that. The second largest donor. Ben Wallace has said Ukraine needs to get better at thanking Western allies for their support. He said there's been a grumble from influential figures in Washington about the level of soldier for Kiev. The former British soldier said there's a slight word of caution here, which whether we like it or not, people want to see gratitude if you're persuading countries to give up their stocks. So, yeah, that happened. Zelensky came out with some cringe. Where was it? Where he said, I didn't know what he meant and how else we should be grateful. We could, get up in the morning, express our gratitude. So he just did this big, we're super, super grateful. He was grateful to the U.S. President Biden and Congress and the people of the United States who are truly the leaders in support and assistance to Ukraine. After the council meeting, I'm very grateful, he added. So he got bullied into basically they put him back in line. I forgot to mention this. Ben Wallace also said, we're not Amazon. Yes, the war is a noble war, and yes, you, Ukraine, are not just fighting for yourselves, but our freedoms. But sometimes you have to persuade doubting politicians in other countries that it's worth it and worthwhile. Some Western pulse said the tensions reflected domestic difficulties, continued to support its needs, and Kiev's disappointments that the weapons and diplomatic backing on offer can fall short of the hopes. The slow progress. Okay. Yeah. So basically, a lot of people are like, it's not going anywhere. Zelensky just keeps complaining. One problem is that Kiev's allies have had further sources apply. Exhausting on stocks. Wallace, for example, said the UK no longer has any mine clearing vehicles left because it had taken and given all of them. Let's just think about this for a minute. So the UK, according to this, has no ability to get rid of mines anymore. That's how depleted this is. America is going to need 10 years to rebuild its artillery shells. The UK has none of this other stuff. It's a fucking shit show. So it didn't go well for Zelensky. There was some literal bad optics where he was exposed as a manlet and humiliated, and people just pretended he wasn't even there, and his wife mocked him. But they did emerge from this with some stuff. So as part of the NATO summit, the G7 countries signed a declaration outlawing long-term security guarantees for Ukraine. Now you may be going, what the fuck why is the G7 involved with this? Like, that's a completely different organization. It overlaps a lot, but I mean, Japan is a member of the G7, but not a member of NATO, although it kind of functionally is. So, like, we're now talking about the G7. The whole NATO thing just completely disappeared. NATO's gonna not issue security guarantees. The G7 is. I still always think of it mentally as the G8 because it used to be the G8 before Russia got kicked out. So okay, incompatible with our security interests. So they've announced security guarantees for Ukraine. Let's take a look at what these security guarantees are, because I think it's going to be very different from what's been happening at the moment. Will revealed a long-term security framework for Ukraine, saying it will seek to implement a reform agenda to help provide Kiev with the good governance necessary to advance towards Euro-Atlantic aspirations. Let's see here. We stand with Ukraine as it defends itself against Russian aggression for as long as it takes, outlining how the G7 will support Ukraine over the long term. The joint statement said the countries will ensure a sustainable force capable of defending Ukraine now and deterring Russian aggression in the future by providing modern military equipment across land, air, and sea, training for Ukraine forces, and intelligence sharing. How the fuck is that different from what they're doing now? Like, how? That's what they're doing. It's like, this big security guarantee to give Ukraine weapons and training and intelligence. Is not what we're doing now? Yes, but it's called a security guarantee. It sounds so cool. It sounds like we clicked the guarantee independence button in Europa Universalis or Hearts of Iron. And once again, like, with what? What is these modern weapons? Biden literally said, we're out of weapons. We don't have anything to give them.
Of that ammunition, and we're low on it. And so what I finally did, took
we're low on it. They don't have the ammunition. Like, it's so fucking stupid. But this is like what we've been reduced to. These are the people who are running our planet. The G7 said it would seek to bolster Ukraine's economic stability, including through recovery efforts, which they're already doing, economic prosperity, provide technical and financial support for Ukraine's immediate needs. I mean, at the moment, the Ukrainian civil service and military is being paid through basically donations from the West. So this is completely different from what they are doing later. We're just, I don't know. It comes after NATO. So the G7, which is basically NATO, is stepping up to fill the hole left by not joining NATO by providing them with what they're providing them with now, except calling it a security guarantee. You see how retarded this whole thing is? And that's like where we are at the moment. That's like the level of retardation that we're dealing with these people. So, yeah, that is the big Vilnius summit. Now Biden like announced that they're sending 3,000 dudes from the reserve forces to Europe as part of the Rapid Response Group, Batman or whatever, and they're going to be there to fight Russia in the event of a war. And it's like I've seen people say like, oh well, if Russia wins, I think this was actually at the GOP debate or whatever. It's like if Russia succeeds in defeating Ukraine, then it'll attack a NATO country because that's going to happen. Because Russia will attack a NATO, that makes sense. That's 100% going to happen. So, like I said, it's over. The NATO is going to keep funding it, but half-heartedly. Nothing fucking happened. We're back to it being Schrodinger's war. I know this video was kind of long and there wasn't as much humor, but there was a lot of shit to cover in this, and I think I did an okay job of it. God bless. If you want more Ukraine Cinematic Universe stuff, let me know.